Hello and welcome to our Expert Tips preview show. We're going to talk everything to do with the Inter Domionion, an amazing harness racing series. And we can't do it without some of harness racing's best experts in Australia, it's fair to say. We've obviously got Ryan Spice here and Darren and Brett Carroll, tipsters on the hub. How are you guys? Ryan, it's great to see you down from Queensland, mate.
Mate, I'm really well and excited to be talking about the Inter Domionion.
And you obviously are very passionate about the Inter Domionion series, and it obviously goes up to Queensland this year.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have it at Albion Park this year, and yeah, it's the pinnacle of the sport, and it's my favourite time of year.
Darren and Brett, it's always good to. This is the first time we've actually met in person. We have a lot of email exchanges, but you guys are two of the best in Victoria. Your names are always bobbing up, and I see you guys on SEN and everything. But it's also a series you love specifically, Darren.
Always loved it. Childhood memories have always been about Inter Dominions. Probably your first memories of harness racing are all about the Inter Dominion, and that's what we all grew up, and that's why we love it so much, I think.
And what about you, Brett? Any memories from past Inter Dominions?
Yeah, I've seen quite a few, I guess. Cramming into Moonee Valley back in the day to see Pro Chevalier win the Inter Dom, that was pretty exciting, just seeing a massive crowd of 40-odd thousand squeezing in there. So yeah, a lot of dramatic finals I've been to.
Well, I'm sort of new to harness racing, and I love watching it on telly whenever I get the chance, but I never was around into harness racing when the Valley was going around. What was it like at the Valley, Brett?
Oh, well, back in the period where there was a big crowds, it was pretty dazzling actually. When you come from the country and you come to the city and there's escalators going up and down and levels of watching in the parade ring with every floor full. It's like, yeah, it was pretty cool, but unfortunately, as time went on, and that's the problem with all codes, crowds do dwindle. So it probably the venue outgrew the code in a way, but it could be a case with a lot of codes now.
Well, my job today is to steer the ship, right? And I can't wait because I'm looking forward to learning a lot about the Inter Domionion and some of these great horses that are going to obviously have a crack at winning the series. I've got so much to learn, and where we're going to start is a bit of education about what the Inter Domionion is. And Ryan, I'd just like to ask you off the top, you know, you're obviously so passionate about the series. Tell us a little bit about what the Inter Domionion is.
So the Inter Domionion is meant to be basically the best of harness racing, and it's where all horses from around Australia and New Zealand are meant to come together basically to battle it out over 2 weeks. The traditional format is 3 rounds of heats in the first week, leading into a grand final the week after. So basically, in the space of 14 days, you have 4 starts.
Amazing. And over time, there's obviously changes of location, and everyone gets a crack at it each year. How does that work?
Yeah, so if we cast the clock back, say 10 or 15 years ago, basically the Inter was on a cycle state by state, and including the North and South Island of New Zealand, and everyone would get a turn. It was a bit of a travelling roadshow. Current format though now is my understanding is it's a contract between Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland stepped into the New Zealand slot, and it's on a 3-year rotation basis. So next year it moves back to Victoria.
Yes.
No, it must be New South Wales. Back to Menangle next year.
Yep.
Whichever one it is.
Yeah, right. And what do you guys think about the series in terms of the history? Is it a progressive thing that harness lovers are just really looking forward to every time of the year?
Yeah, when you think back to the history of the race and things like that, I think the harness racing tragics would have booked their holidays annually around the Inter Domionion. If you talk to some of the real stalwarts of the sport, a lot of them met up by going to carnivals, and it was a real carnival atmosphere type thing. The biggest thing about the series is such a challenge. It's a challenge not only for the horse, because we're going to run 4 times in 2 weeks, which is quite challenging, especially when you compare that with a thoroughbred, for instance. But it's also a real challenge for the drivers and trainers, because they've got to get the horses through the series, and quite stressful. There's been a few horses that haven't survived the series, and a few trainers and drivers that haven't got through the series as well as they would have coped as well. So not only is it challenging, but the best horse doesn't always win. So you can't just say, well, it's clearly the favourite, so to win. History shows it doesn't happen.
And that's why your job as form analysts for harness racing is so important, because you need to try help steer punters into what horses to back at obviously the right price and potentially the ones to lay as well. Brett, I just want to ask you also, any fond memories of the series in the past and the history? How do you feel about the changing of location and what it does for harness racing?
Yeah, I think the location changes doesn't have a great impact for me as long as the series is traditional. They did tinker with it a few years back where they just had 2 heats and didn't think it worked quite as well. I think to me it's a bit like the Melbourne Cup, as in I'm hopeless at tipping the winner of the Melbourne Cup, but I still enjoy it because it's a challenge, and this series is a bit similar. Like, there's no way I could have tipped the last two winners, because at the start of the series, and after the final I might have gone, oh yeah, I guess I could have seen that or that, but if we're sitting in this spot the previous years, there's no way I would have tipped to the winner.
Neither of us would have.
That's part of the fun.
No.
That's part of the fun.
Yeah.
So so in a way it's got about that sort of equation with the Melbourne Cup, and yeah.
Let's talk about the betting, Ryan. I'll just go back to you. So, how's the betting been in the series over the last couple of years?
It's been difficult to, as Brett alluded to, we've had some big price winners with the 2 Grimson runners winning in I Cast No Shadow and Bonsell Benjamin. I've been, I think if you can build a book around sort of the likely horses to qualify for the final, and particularly the favourites, and then if you can sort of lay one back and manage your position that way, it's not the worst strategy in the world.
Perfect. And just before we go on, I know we went into just an overview of how the series works, but specifically the heats. So how do horses end up getting into their grand final, and how do the heats work?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a game of chess for the trainers and drivers to get through, navigate the heats successfully to qualify for the final. So the final will be 12 runners in the top 12 point scorers. You need to obviously accumulate as many points as you can through the 3 heats to qualify. But as Darren was alluding to, you need to be able to manage your horse so that it still peaks on the final, yet get through with perhaps doing not minimal amount of work, but still have your horse in the absolute best shape possible. So if you've done really well on rounds 1 and 2, accumulated enough points, potentially in that 3rd round, you might, if you draw bad, you might look after your horse to a certain extent.
Geez, the tactical nature of it sounds fascinating. I'm curious to know about the difference between the trotting and the pacing as well, Darren.
Yeah, good question. You explained this really good the other day when I heard you say it, but in simple terms, it's what they call the gait of the horse. The trotter alternates its front and back legs at the same time, yet a pacer uses its front and back legs at the same time in a swinging motion, a bit like a train, I suppose. The pacer, but
so the gallopers is front and back legs together. Pacing is side to side together with the use of hobbles as well, and trotting is that alternate leg. So there's the 3 different gaits.
The trotters is probably more pronounced, in France and overseas, but our predominant code here has been pacing, but in probably the last 10 years, our breed has become so much stronger and better. And we're now getting to the stage where our series favourite in the Trotters, Just Believe, competed overseas in France last year. So Sweden, sorry. Yeah. So the code.
That was this year.
Yeah, this year. So the code for our trotting breed is much better and stronger. So
amazing. And Brett, from a betting perspective, how does it all come into play? The difference between trotting and pacing.
I'm a massive fan of betting on trotters actually, because a lot of time with the trotters, there are lesser chances, in my opinion, there are less winning hopes in a race, whereas the pacers, I think that if certain conditions pan out in a race, a lot of times any horse can win, but with the trotters, I still think the class of the really good ones is going to shine through, so I like betting on trotting races generally.
Amazing.
Yeah, in saying that though, in lower level trotting races, I feel like there's more $50, $60, $100 winners because of the galloping factor than in
but
pacing
sometimes
world.
that's good to get value too, because you can observe those.
But certainly at that elite level, at the top end of things, they're pretty pure, and trotters galloping at that top end, it's quite minimal.
Very.
So when horses gallop in the run, that's obviously not what they're supposed to be doing. How often does that happen?
from a pacer's point of view, usually interference occurs and they get checked and gallop in the run. Some can be a bit unruly at the start and things like that, but probably minimum for pacers. But for the trotters, because the gait can be a bit more extravagant and they don't wear the hobbles and things like that, can be more often. But I would have thought at this standard, it will be rare because we're talking about the top 24 trotters that we've got to compete in this series. So we won't see much of that happening is what we think. And certainly if you look at a horse like Just Believe, he's a number one. Can you remember the last time he galloped?
Let's not do that, but
No, I can't remember. Can you?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
apologies to Greg Sugars and Jess Tubbs if
Yeah.
There'll be one for the cut and the pace, won't it?
Well, guys, you may have seen, obviously, at Betfair, we love to do education and talk to our punters about, what the pros and the elite form analysts such as yourself are doing in run. And we're going to have a bit of a back to school segment. And I've got a million questions, but I'm curious to know, even opinions from each other, how you go about things. But I'll start with Ryan here first. So let's talk about the way you approach harness racing from a betting perspective and specifically using the Betfair exchange.
Yeah, so for me, I often feel like with Betfair of late, the relevance is just, it's increased tenfold. Our initial markets now are, 135%-ish. And, if something is backed early, the market percentage is out of control. And yet, if something's $4 to $2.80, yet on Betfair, it'll be back out to $5 at jump time.
Yeah.
And you kind of sit there, scratch your head, and you think, why have you taken that early price?
And then people start to get concerned, why has this horse drifted? Well, it hasn't drifted, it's just getting back to its right price.
And you kind of can see now from a fixed odds perspective, the majority of the field does drift with the way, once the market percentage comes down. So I think, from the way Brett and Darren go about it, minimal early fixed odds betting, but the bulk of their transactions is on the fair and late. I think it's more relevant than ever. Me personally, I tend to certainly do shop early in the fixed markets, and often I'm just snipping around the edges and managing my position late on Betfair. And then in play, for me, it's more about managing. I'll be looking, say, if I've got the favourite going for a good result and I'm thinking that horse is going to zip to the top, I want to just manage my downside risk and lay him out that way. That's how I use in play more often than not, rather than actually trying to get my stake on in the run.
So just curious, and one more question for you, Ryan. Just curious, once the races go in play, are you betting, thinking about what position a horse will get into, and potentially you're not willing to have a bet pre-play, but if a horse gets into a good position, you're willing to potentially back or even lay?
Yeah, one strategy I like to use is, I'm a bit of a fan of the Betfair starting price tool. If I like a horse that's drawn back row or I know he's going to be going back, I'm more than happy to use BSP because we find in Queensland that anything that jumps on the front end, their BSP in some way is often a lot shorter than what the last traded price is. So that's one method of how I like to use the exchange. And most of the action's around the favourite. Would you guys
and the leader?
The favourite and the leader. So you can't be just looking at the whole race in totality and trying to pick one out type of thing. You got to have a specific strategy. It's sort of around what's rolled to the top or what's sitting in the trail to a lesser extent, and certainly what's happened to the favourite in the run.
What about you, the Carrolls, Darren and Brett? What's your strategy? Is it similar to Ryan in the fact he bets early, or you like to do all your betting late?
The wonderful thing about betting, and particular trots, the people I associate with anyhow, is we all do things differently, and that's what's so magical, is that we can all find different ways of winning, and quite often there's been examples where we've collated after a race and what did you do, and we've all done something completely different. We've all been able to win on the race. I think the key to the trots and the harness racing is mapping. So critical to the way in which your strategy before the race as well, because you're trying to think about how this race is going to work and unfold, and then so many opportunities then create for themselves after that map. Because say, for instance, you want to back something at $2.50 before the race, then once it leads, it gets into $1.60 200 metres after the start. That creates so many different opportunities from a Betfair point of view to be able to trade out and green up, as we say, and things like that. So, for me, there's just so many different opportunities, and I bet as late as possible purely because I like to get into a marketplace that's getting around about 105% type thing, and I also like to see, I suppose, where the money's going, and I then use my own form to go, do I agree with that money or do I not agree with that money? And then either back or lay. I love laying horses if I think they're overbet by other people. So, and that's what Betfair's all about, my opinion versus someone else's opinion, and using it.
I love it. You've definitely, that was fascinating. Brett, I'm curious to...
Yeah, much the same. I just love, the whole map thing is just so crucial. But in play product, for me, every day I'm so grateful because I find ways to use it to advantage or just to manage a position, as Ryan was suggesting. So there's a lot of races where, I'm confident in the map and I'll bet pre-play on that map. But similarly, there are some races where you have to be prepared for the unexpected and to, so for example, a horse I liked the other day, I thought it was an absolute special. It was around 220 and it played up and caused a false start. So I was stressed out. So I got out, I cancelled closed my positions on using the Betfair and end up to lose $5 and then go, all right, I'm resetting. It turned out it behaved itself, it led, it won easy, and I bet at $1.60. Yeah, I didn't get 220, but I didn't do, if it played up and missed the start again, I was going to get nothing. And so that's
Confidence
great.
is everything, right?
Yeah. So it's a great tool because I could go, all right, I'm out, I'll reset. So, I'm disappointed that it didn't just behave itself the first time and would have made everything a lot easier, but I had the capability to plan around it. And similarly at Melton the other night, there was a horse that was quite heavily backed. I didn't really like it, but it was really fierce in the run. And I'm like, there's no way this horse can win. You're laying it double the price that it started, but it finished last. You know what I mean?
What price do you assess that horse at the time?
So you say things are short when they lead. Sometimes you don't like that horse. That's fine. Yeah. It's interesting. I was watching a race with Matt Leppard at Melton, and he was on a leader at Albion Park, and I knew that Ryan had tipped something else in the race. So I was just curious what Ryan would have done. Matt Leppard's tip was in front, and it was favourite, so it probably would have traded quite short, and it didn't go very good. But Ryan's tip either didn't win either, but Ryan may have gone, I've backed this thing, it's back in the pack, I might just lay the leader to cover my bet, possibly. Things like that. It's just, the product is just amazing.
Certainly lots of possibilities. I like the discussion around the map and probably something that we'll finish with before moving on to the Inter Dominion previews. But I have a question about the map, and this is for anyone that wants to answer. But obviously, in horse racing, it's so important and the barriers come into play. Where the horse starts in its position, is that how you're doing form, or is it the historical starting profile of those horses? What's the main contender of the two?
So one key difference with how harness racing and the gallops differ in their setup, we have, the majority of our races are mobile starts, and if you're horse number one, you're starting from barrier number one, whereas you might be horse number one in the gallops, but you're jumping from barrier 15, and that's indicated in the form guide in brackets beside the horse's name. So that's one key difference, without a doubt. And then each track has its own different configuration, so that's something punters need to be aware of. How many horses are off the front line? How many horses are off the back row?
Do they have sprint lanes?
Yep. That's another, obviously, a real key component to mapping the race, see where your horse is going to sit, and if they're going to get that inside run potentially. But in saying that, not all horses like turning left and going down the sprint lane either. So
can I just ask Ryan, because you know Albion Park better than me, are there any positions in the run, let's say the 1200 metre mark, where you really don't want to be?
The track now that it's become so hard and fast, and majority of the time pegs dominated, that I think if you're leading the 3 wide line, any side, if you tip and roll before the 800 and you're leading that 3 wide line and down the back and you've carted the field up, I think you're absolutely cast.
Yeah.
You have to have so much on your rivals to be able to prevail with how hard and fast they race and how much extra work you're doing.
And that's good for education for the punters out there, because I think with the in-play product, as much as I love it, if you wait until the last, say, about the 500-metre mark, it becomes very hard. The amount of time things are like shutting off because everyone's seeing it. But if you can be ahead of the curve, as Ryan's just saying, horses 3 wide at the bell, they've got a lap to go, and it might be a $4 shot, so it might be trading at $6 because at that position it's fourth in the run. So you could, on Ryan's evidence, you go, really, it should be probably a $15 shot at this point. You can start laying it and see how you go. And yeah, but once you wait to the sort of 600-metre mark, it becomes harder to get that money on or off, so to speak.
Yep.
But yeah.
The other position and run that I like to take on is, all of our race callers seem to want to tell us that the 1-1 is such a beautiful position in the run. They call it the sweet seat. And there's a little bit inside of me that just my blood boils every time I hear it. The 1-1 is actually quite a difficult position these days, in my opinion. You're getting flushed pretty early if you stay in. You're a higher chance of not getting a run. So it's, to me, Personally, obviously, I think lead and trail are the two positions we want to be.
3 fence horse seems to pop through.
3 fence or breeze,
Park.
if you're good enough, generally speaking, you get your chance to win.
Perfect. Well, I mean, we're going to start talking about specifically the Inter Dominion, and I love that track insight. Before, I was going to ask, are there any other track insights at Albion Park that punters should look out for?
Well, the track was renovated probably about 6 to 8 weeks ago, and it was actually playing beautifully. Horses were winning from any position in the run. But
what did they do to the track, sorry?
So they gave it a renovation. So they basically...
Resurface?
Yeah, so they...
Not the actual turn, not the turns or anything?
No, they just basically, I think, take sort of the top layer off, roll new material back down, and then go through a process to bed it back down. And sometimes the track will race a bit slow initially to start with, and that's just par of the course and what you would expect to happen. But every time you get a track renovation, it seems there's a little bedding down process, but it can play a little bit different to how it would usually play. And we were seeing there for about 6 weeks, the best horses winning more often from any position and run, and it was really, really refreshing. Yeah. Whereas perhaps up to the end of the cycle before the renovation, it was really lead, trail and 3 fence were just dominating. Yep. 80-90% of races. So we've kind of got back to that now, that it's, you got to be lead or trail pretty much. Otherwise, you have to have that much ability on your rivals to sit in most other positions to win. And just back to getting your maps right, I absolutely subscribe to that. But I also feel like race tempo and race shape is probably as important. If you've got...
Yeah, understand whether there's an enforcer in the race and things like that.
Yeah. And on further,
that's part of the map,
for education for the punters out there might not be aware, Queensland's been a bit at the forefront with the vision of putting the sectional times on the corner of the screen. So while the race is unfolding, you can look and see what the tempo is. So it has a lead time for every race, and then it will go in 400-metre splits. It will show you those splits. So anything faster than 28 is really quick. But if they run like a 31 early, you'll go like, there's no way they're coming from behind and getting past these because they're getting too easy in front.
Yeah, so, if they, over the mile racing, if they can back off that second quarter to say
29.5 or something.
Well, if they break 30, it seems to be everyone gets their chance to more of an extent. But if the leader backs that second quarter off to like 31 seconds and you're out the back, it's very difficult.
Yeah. And one thing I would like to touch on based on that was the new faster feed that we're getting nowadays, the vision
on the tab app
and on the opportunity to watch it, and probably only about a 1.5 to 2 second delay.
That's a big difference.
What that's doing is just creating a level playing field, and what we're seeing is more confidence in the market and more money, I'm seeing anyhow, and therefore if we're talking about these times coming up, then you have confidence to bet with what you're seeing as opposed to what you might be trying to hear or trying to anticipate. So from a product point of view, the in-play and the fact that the trots races go for anywhere between 2 minutes to 3 minutes, there's so many opportunities from start to finish and before the race to take place. So that's why I think the product from a trots point of view is becoming more enticing and more exciting because of the fact that we've now got a largely level playing field.
Absolutely. Well, let's get stuck into talking about some of the key contenders, and we're going to kick off with the Pacers first. And the first horse we're going to talk about is Leap to Fame. I'll start with maybe you, Ryan, leap to fame. What are some of the key attributes about this horse that makes it a contender?
Sure. So Leap to Fame is a Queensland horse, trained and driven by Grant Dixon, who's been around for a very long time and pretty much had the largest team in Queensland for quite some time. They've had some wonderful horses over the years. This horse they've had since Grant bought him out of a sale in New South Wales. He's by the super sire Better's Delight, so he's got that staying blood and pedigree. In his 3-year-old year, he was able to win the Victorian, the New South Wales and the Queensland Derby. So winning 3 derbies is certainly nothing to be sneezed at. He's such a great stayer.
Looks like the series would just suit him, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
the whole race 4 times in 2 weeks just gives you the opinion it just has to suit him, doesn't it?
I think so.
And it's in his home state as well, which you think would have to suit him because of the weather point of view. And he just holds so many aces, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's kind of had the perfect preparation. This I think, has been their #1 target for the entire year. They gave him a real quiet start to the year. He virtually spelled for like the first 4 or 5 months before he started his prep for his winter campaign. So they knew they were going to have a big back end of the year, and I think this series is, since it's a hometown.
It's hard to find a fault, isn't it?
Yeah, I think his one fault is that he doesn't have natural high gate speed. It is developing.
Yeah, it is.
It really is improving, which is great. I think if he can improve his gate speed by another half a length to a length, then he's going to have absolutely every attribute that you want in a racehorse. He's worthy pre-post favourite around the $1.80 at $2 mark, in my opinion. If he draws in the final, he'll qualify for the final, even if he gets knocked over and runs last in a heat. He'll still qualify because he'll run top 2 in the other 2 heats. If he draws to dominate, if he gets that barrier draw advantage in the final,
he'll be under $2, but
he'll be very short.
Yeah, be very dependent on barrier draws what price he is.
Perfect. Let's talk about Swayze. And you guys let me know earlier that Team Grimson, they've won the last 2 Inter Dominions. Do you want to start with Swayze?
Yeah, well, Jason Grimson, amazing ability to peak his horses. If you talk about the last 2 Inter Dominion winners, they both went through the series without winning a heat, which is quite unusual. And they both won their finals at $51 and $16 or something like that, which is, our last 2 Inter Dominion winners have gone around at big odds. Swayze hasn't been in the camp for that long, so he's taken it over in the last, say, 6 to 9 months. And in that time, this horse has just gone from strength to strength. He caught everyone's attention when he went to Queensland and took on Blacks of Fake in his home turf, Leap to Fame in his home term in the Blacks of Fake. And he led in that race and was just really dominant. And he's really strong and tough and hard to catch. And in particular, if he was to draw to lead and Leap to Fame was to draw to have to sit outside him, then we have one race on our hands. And one of the real oddities about it is that Leap to Fame and Swayze are brothers, so half brothers. So some real rivalry, and I think this is what makes Inter Dominion sometimes is the rivalry at the top. And what better example do we have of two brothers competing in the race?
Yeah, it really can be a strong marketing perspective, I think, the Battle of the Brothers. Swayze's 5, Leap to Fame's 4. And we've seen now Swayze win the Blacks of Fake, but also come back this preparation.
Yep.
He's run 2 outstanding times at Menangle, just jogging in basically and smashing the clock. Jason Grimson's taken him to New Zealand for the Stand Start New Zealand Cup, and Cam Hart got him away, stayed in front of his main danger, Akuta, put him on the front end, and then just let him loose from about 1,000 out. Akuta sort of did get a drop onto his back, and I must admit at the 400,
but it was pretty similar to the Blacks of Fake, wasn't it? He gets to the 400 metre mark and he looks vulnerable, and then he just finds another gear.
He just keeps trucking.
Brett, I just want to ask you about the driver rivalries. Tell us a little bit about them. Obviously,
the driver rivalries.
Yeah, anything about driver rivalries? Because I feel like in those races that they go for 2 or 3 minutes, you have drivers probably talking to each other the whole time. Is there a lot of chatter that happens when
there
the
probably
horses are
could
racing?
be, but I think they're pretty focused on what they got in front of them, and they've got a lot of express horsepower to be handling, and I don't think
They're not
there's
allowed
very
to
many.
talk.
There's not much, you know, like I wouldn't say there's like bitter rivalries where they're like, you know, there might be at some country tracks, but not no, I'm serious, there are, where you might be a bit annoyed because drivers might be doing more to beat a rival rather than win the race sometimes, but not in this standard. Swayze, the Swayze Elite to Fame rivalry is quite fascinating because when Swayze won the Blacks to Fake, Elite to Fame got a flat tyre at the 400 metre mark, so his tyre actually came off. So you like, would Elite to Fame, if he didn't have a flat tyre, would he have got closer? Would he have stayed with him? You don't know, you know. And Swayze hasn't been beaten with this stable, so you got to go. This is a whole new horse. Forget about the history. This horse, you got to look at it as being unbeaten. And then he come up first up, as Ryan alluded, at Menangle. It was on Victoria Cup night, and I watched the race, and I was like amazed because I was like, wow, this horse is even better than the one that won the Blacks to Fake. And I was not surprised that he won the New Zealand Cup. It was all just standing start was the only issue for me.
Yep.
So
I suppose another little factor in the Swayze Elite to Fame camp is now, my understanding is Jason Grimson's probably going to be bringing a couple of other contenders as well in the form of Hi, my name is Jeff and Better Zip It.
Who have got gate speed.
Yeah, they both got gate speed and they're both high quality horses in their own right. And what Hi, my name is Jeff's been doing at Menangle over the last couple of months has been very impressive in his own right. And that just might be another, if he was to qualify all three horses for the final.
it definitely makes them closer. Their market price, Swayze and Elite to Fame, should be about the same because Grimson has other horses to run some interference, shall we say. And Dixon, no, I'm not saying anything nefarious because they're horses that have natural speed.
Yeah.
Whereas Dixon has one other horse that doesn't have that tactical ability, you know. So that's going to be a factor.
All right, guys, let's move on. That was a great conversation about Leap to Fame and Swayze. We've got to move on to Rock and Roll Do. And Darren, I'll push to you for that horse.
Yeah, he's a very talented horse. He his probably best opportunity through this series would be to drive Sit Sprint. His last run was outstanding, coming off 3 fence at Bendigo in a free-for-all race. Other than that, he led in the Victoria Cup and set the pace and set the scene. Was only really run down late on the line. So he's versatile. He gives me the understanding that he'd appreciate the 4 runs in 2 days as well, 2 weeks as well. He's got a very aggressive driver, one of the most aggressive drivers in the series, who tends to want to lead and want to be aggressive and want to be very tactical. So he will have an influence on the series some way. Where it is, I don't know, but he will definitely have an impact on the series either through the heats or through the final, and his barrier draw will be critical through the series as well, but critical in the final too. But yeah, he's a live chance, probably debatable amongst us how much of a live chance, but I can't discount him because I think he's an outstanding horse.
Any thoughts on the horse?
Yeah, I'm probably more negative on Rock and Roll Do at the current price. I think the variation between his best and his worst performances, it's quite stark. Whereas you take, say, Swayze and A Leap to Fame, I feel like you know what you're getting on the track each and every start. And as Darren alluded to, Mick Stanley generally doesn't take no for an answer. So if he actually drew perfectly and did somehow have the gate speed to dominate from the front end, my gut tells me that he would try and take that opportunity. But I probably concur with, I think at this level, his best opportunity to actually win the race would be to stalk them.
Yeah, if the others go to war.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely sure that he'll be driven that way through the series. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't win a heat, but I think he's a live chance in the final because he'll be driven to be a chance in the final, providing that the final will be run as fierce as what we anticipate. So I think he's a live chance.
Yeah, I'm against at the current price, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about Spirit of St. Louis. And Brett, I'll throw to you to discuss this horse.
He's one of those horses that I've never really been a fan of, but he always surprises me. He always steps up that bit when you don't expect it. His last runs at Melton have been amazing. He's had no luck at all in the feature races he's been in. He probably could have won the last 2 Group 1s he's been in at Melton. When he's ventured down here, he just didn't have the right luck. And he was first past the post in the Inter Dominion 2 years ago.
No, that was expensive ego.
My bad. Sorry.
That's
There you
right.
go.
Right stable.
Right stable. Yeah.
But he did go through that series very well. I think he.
Yeah. So he's a competitor, and he's probably suited by a fierce final that we expect as well. And he's always driven well. So the McCarthy stable won 7 of 9 heats 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And the Emma Stewart stable won 7 of 9 heats last year, neither of which won the final, which is interesting in itself. I don't think anyone's going to win 7 of 9 heats this week. Grimson's a rough chance.
Oh, yeah, Team Grimson is probably the only
He's the only chance to
yeah.
win 7 of 9.
What's interesting about the Team McCarthy runners is both horses are by Sweet Lou, and there is a little bit of prevailing wisdom that perhaps at a long trip level that they do underperform a smidgen as an entire cohort. So it's interesting that their preparation, Can't Find a Better Man and Spirit of St. Louis, is they're pretty much coming into the series fresh.
Okay.
So I'm sort of thinking this might be a deliberate tactic to build through the series to try and peak them on the final, and it'll be interesting to see if it works.
An outstanding trainer, like
The best, yeah.
Team McCarthy. Yeah.
The last of the paces that we're going to talk about is Better Eclipse, right? What do you think of the horse's chances?
Yeah, real lovely horse. Jess Tubbs,
Great trainer.
great trainer, and probably I would rate Greg Sugars in the top 3 drivers in the country.
Definitely.
His
combination,
patience
yeah.
is just, it's so good to watch how well he can time a horse's run, make the right move at the right time. I really like Better Eclipse. I think he's a great place hope for the final.
I think
Another
Better
opportunist, isn't he?
Sorry, I think Better Eclipse is actually a better horse drawing poorly.
Yeah, yep.
Funnily enough, because if he draws well, he's committed to using a bit up early. And I think historically his best runs have been from bad draws because he's got such a good driver that are kind of better off drawing poorly, getting a better price, and being just as good as a place bet in the
And
final.
he's got a terrific record. He won the Chariots of Fire. I think he ran 3rd in the Miracle Mile. The start after. He's also then won a Sunshine Sprint. So we know that he gets around Albion Park and has performed really well up there in the past. He probably underperformed in the Blacks of Fake that he went round in.
And had an arrogant win last start in a free-for-all at Bendigo. It was just an arrogant, soft victory. So, again, another horse who's just working into the series, and he'll enjoy the 4 runs in 2 weeks like he did last year. He made the final last year. He won at least 2 heats that I can recall. So
He can be a little bit quirky. He can make a mistake. I think it was the 3rd round of heats. He just didn't want to go away. Yeah. But he's high in talent. If he can stalk and they've gone hard, I think he can definitely run top 3 in the final.
So the first round of heats will be over the sprint trip, and I recommend punters out there to seek out Ryan's hub for that because they're mile heats, so the maps will be very important. And a lot of horses have got probably 0 chance of winning the final, and that's their chance for their glory to win a heat the first round because there are 4 heats the first round, and I've earmarked a few horses that are probably really great chances in the sprint heat, like you Turn It Up, Black Sedance. Anything else you can think of, Ryan, that might kind of look out for?
Kind of that
heat?
pure miler perspective. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what the final 36 is. Today is the day of recording is final acceptances. So other horses that are perfectly suited to the mile setup. I think the big guns are going to sort of dominate all heats, really. But I reckon one thing, Turn It Up. This Queensland horse trained by Shane Graham,
he could lead from 10.
His gate speed, I like to call him a gazelle. He is so fast.
I don't expect much friendly fire in these mile heats because I think this is their chance. You Turn It Up, etc.
Yeah,
they're not going to be handing up.
No, I think if Swayze or Leap to Fan come a knocking, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Personally.
Well, let's talk about some of the key contenders on the trotting side. The first one we're going to talk about is Just Believe. Who wants to kick us off there?
I'll go. Not as much depth in the trotters, I wouldn't have thought. So Just Believe is an absolute superstar and really one of those kind of horses just because he's not a glamorous looking horse or anything like that, but his record has been unbelievable since joining Jess Tubbs. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's he would have only been defeated a couple of times. He went through the series last year undefeated, won the final, and then, as we talked about before, went over and competed in the elite lop, where he made an early error, got checked and made an early error, but then subsequently competed and ran second in a feature race over there as well. Quite an arduous situation to fly across the other side of the world. The travel is just huge. Comes back through quarantine, all those kind of things. Had 6 months off spell, and then come out last week and smashed the clock at Bendigo. And I think all of us sat up and went, "Wow, he's back." If not, he looked like he was better than what he was last year, and that's an ominous sign for the opposition. He doesn't have any flaws. He's got gate speed. He can make runs when he wants to make runs if the speed's on. He's just so adaptable. Trained by Jess Tubbs, driven by Greg Sugars. He just ticks every box that there is. So he deserves to be the short price favourite that he is, and it's hard to argue the fact that why he's currently in red figures.
So many good things. What are the negatives, Ryan?
Geez, for Just Believe, to be honest, as Darren said, he ticks every box. I don't think he does really have any negatives. I think we've already seen him go through a series, and then he sat Park to win the final, collaring Majestuoso on the last 50. I think one of the wonderful things is this horse is leased by a big group of owners.
And massive syndicate.
It's just really great to see the joy this horse has brought a large group of people.
Love that.
Yeah, it's just really, it's fantastic. So yeah, I'm really keen that he's going to come to Queensland.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because before last week and his dominant win, I think we all thought, massive ask to come back from such a travel situation. Everyone was on the Queen Elida bandwagon, I think, and then because the way in which he beat Queen Elida last week, I think we all just stood up and went, "Wow." He's number one.
Well, that's the next horse we're going to talk about here, Queen Elida. Brett, what are your thoughts on the horse?
Well, when Just Believe was recovering from the arduous overseas journey, Queen Elida won every single group race it was about. I don't know how many, maybe 7 or something, and completely untouchable until Just Believe came back. So they're just head and shoulders above the rest. It's been proven over the last 18 months between the two of them. They've won everything there is. So it's probably genuinely a 2-horse race. Yeah, you're probably not sure if you could do Just Believe to win, Queen Elida to place.
Same
in
race,
multi, you might be able to. That'd be pretty good, I reckon. Yeah,
Come on, Carl, what can you come up with?
We'll have a talk to the market ops team and see what they can do.
I think she's Australia's best trotting mare, Queen Elida. But in saying that, for me, she does have some negatives. I think if you look through her record, the times that she's been in a fast run staying contest, I think she's just been found out just that little bit.
Yep.
At the short course and the middle trip, she's sort of near untouchable.
Yep.
But I think there is that chink in the armour over over a long course. We saw she sat 3 fence in the Inter Domionion final last year, and I must admit at the 400, I thought if she got out, she was the one, and she just whacked away to the line. So yeah, I'm with Darren and Brett that if you're having an early pre-series bet, that Just Believe's probably a much better winning position. But as the boys thought, $1.50 the place is great shopping as well.
Well, they're the two standouts, Just Believe and Queen Elida. Let's talk about Constantinople though. There's a couple other contenders, and while they're probably underneath the top two, they're still worth talking about. Constantinople, Darren, what are your thoughts?
New South Wales trained, so Belinda McCarthy, and he won a golden ticket, so one of the races that make you exempt through the series. Look, he's a nice trotter. Would he come up against these two? I doubt it. So I'd be taking him on through the series, but we'll get a good look at him. But is he a winning chance? I would doubt it.
What's the market going to do with the horse, considering he's won that win in your in race? Is the market going to gravitate towards having the horse a little bit shorter than what it should be?
I think in the early fixed odds markets, he's probably a true unders. So yeah, I think he'll get back out for sure.
Yep. Mufasa Metro?
Well, yeah, controversially handed up the lead in the final last year because, it's genuinely a leader. And so that does give it a chance because he generally does prefer to hold these days. I don't know, he just had a bit of a decision to hand up last year and give up his winning chance. But this year...
Hasn't got over it yet.
A bit bitter about that, mate?
No, not at all. I think drivers make wise decisions at all times, Ryan. No, but look, he's actually a pretty good horse. He's generally top 4 chance in the final for sure. And he has tactical speed. He can lead from any gate off the front.
Yeah.
And to be honest, he would hand up to Just Believe in the final. That wouldn't be a bad decision at all.
Yeah.
And he's definitely a top 4 chance.
Yeah.
And he's got stronger than he was last year. He's a strong horse.
Yeah. He's around about the $12 mark at the moment, which means an okay place. He'll definitely be winning heats.
Yeah.
His last 2 runs have been outstanding.
If he draws well for the heat on Saturday, he's definitely a bet. Unless he's against Just Believe. That's the only horse he won't beat, I reckon, over a mile.
Yep.
Rightio. Well, the last trotter we're going to talk about is Plymouth Chubb.
I'd like to talk about him.
Yep.
Yeah, because outstanding juvenile. I think he won something like
13 in a row.
just
streak, wasn't
outstanding. And then he broke down, and then he had put him out for quite some time. Then he come back last season and performed quite well. He won a heat of the Great Southern Star, showing his gate speed from an outside draw. So he's got really good gate speed. If you have a look at him in the yard or if you have a look at him on screen, you'll think, look at this thing. He's massive, but he's also big in his stature, as well as the fact that he needs racing to get to his fitness. He's only had 2 runs this time in, and I've looked at him and he gives me the indication that every run will improve him, and I just get the feeling he's massive odds. He's $34 type thing at the moment. He's the kind of horse that you had a little ticket each way on him at that price. He'll get better through the series and he will compete, and I have no doubt he'll make the final.
He'd be a fairy tale story of some significance after breaking down twice. Yeah.
Trained by the great Peter Manning, who stalwart of the sport, legend of the sport. Hopefully driven by Peter's daughter, Karen, who's had a wrist injury through a fall recently. So she's aiming to be making the comeback for this, but she's the most winningest reins woman in the world. So that would be a really good story, and good to have Karen part of the series. Yeah.
I did see him run his first up run at Maryborough a few weeks ago, and I thought, gee, he's carrying a lot of condition. Then I saw a note from the trainer said I forget how many kilos it was. He reckons he was about 60 kilos overweight or something. So, he'll get that off as he gets racing. So it'll be interesting to note his complexion on track for people who are on track.
He's the one that's the improver that I see.
Yep. Yeah. Makes sense. That's all. They're all the key contenders so far that we've written down. But any others quickly that come to mind that you'd love to talk about?
Is Olivici coming?
Yeah, I haven't seen
He's still in.
He's well in the market.
I'm unsure. I haven't seen a definite yay or nay.
So he's one that's well in the market at the moment. If he is there, then I think he's probably too thin in the market at this point in time.
There had to be a lot of locals to make up the numbers, and I'm afraid they really are literally making up the numbers in this event. It's just the way it's turned out. There's 2 dominant horses, a couple of support casts, and that's pretty much it, unfortunately.
It's important information for the punters to know for this year. That's why we're doing the show. We're going to go and talk about some betting angles. I'm curious to know, for all you 3. Is there a horse potentially at bigger odds that you're really wanting to keep an eye on? I'll start with you, Ryan.
A horse that intrigues me for the series, I'm just really intrigued to see how it progresses, handles the series, and what level he can get to is the Luke McCarthy trained Can't Find a Better Man. He strikes me as a horse that could make it at Grand Circuit level. He's sort of $40 plus in the markets. I wouldn't be shocked if we get to the end of this series and we have a different opinion of him, that he's bridged the gap and that he's going to be a key contender in whatever he goes around in. He's certainly got the top end speed. He is a horse that has beaten Leap to Fame in the Southeast Queensland Derby, I think when they were 3. But in saying that, he had a dream trip to beat him that day. But yeah, so he's sort of one I'm going to keep an eye on.
Yep.
He's a really nice type. He's a bit of in the mould of Better Eclipse in his action and his high speed. So, he's the one I'm looking forward to. From a Queensland angle in the Trotters, there's an old horse going around, Sir Fahrenheit. His last couple of starts in Queensland have been maybe career best. I could see him definitely making a final.
What price would he be at the moment?
I think he's about 150s each way. I might have a small place ticket on him, perhaps. Because anything can happen once you get into the final, apart from the two big guns, right? So, and I think Queensland's best trotter the last 6 months has probably been Adele, Jack Butler trained mare who did a lot of racing here in Victoria. She's a bit like Rock and Roll Do. Her best is outstanding, but her flaws, she can just put an absolutely horror run or be prone to making a mistake or not scoring up. So if she brought her best, she definitely could make a final. I don't think she can win though.
Darren, Brett, any roughies you're keeping an eye on?
From a pacer's point of view, I think it's all going to get down to barrier draws and things like that. So I'd find it very hard for one of the ones outside the ones we've already talked about to win at big odds. But in saying that, look what happened the last couple of years. But they did draw. Both of those come from leaders back to win. So this far out, I think imperative to keep an eye on the hub when we get to finals time to look at how we map the race. And I'm sure come finals night we'll see something at value. Because we've seen it run through the heat so far that hasn't had much luck, that might draw to get 3 fence and it might be $41 or something like that, and we go, hey, it's a really good chance. But probably the Trotters angle point of view is more the Mufasa Metro, Plymouth Chubb type thing, because I see that the Trotters is far thinner than what the Pacers is. But again, I find it very hard to think that they could beat the top two anyhow.
I've got a good horse to keep an eye on from a punting point of view for the Pacers series. My name is Jeff.
Yep.
Because even though with Grimson and with his previous trainers, he hasn't been a horse who enjoys being off the fence or from a back row. So if he draws well first round, I'll be getting stuck into him. And conversely, if he draws poorly a second round or another round, I'll be betting against him and betting other horses. So just something to be aware of, because he might be under the odds. If he draws well first round, he'll be winning his heat.
Yeah.
He might be under the odds next round because he has a really great trainer and driver. But the fact is, there's all the evidence says that when he's off the track, he can't win because he's just got a bit of a quirky action, and that's him. So it's something to keep in mind through the series.
Absolutely. Horses that we're taking on, gentlemen. Any lay prospects at this stage?
Yeah, for me and the Pacers at the current prices for the whole series, I'd be happy to be against Rock and Roll Do. And in the Trotters, I don't think I have a lay bet as such, but certainly I think the $1.80 that's out there, Just Believe, I think that's a great price.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, if Swayze and Leap to Fame both make the final, as we expect, I can't see Leap to Fame starting shorter than $1.80, no matter what happens through the series.
Yeah.
So
he'd have to draw 2 or something, wouldn't he?
Well, your $1.80, if you laid $1.80 now, I'd be confident you could manage that position, come to the final.
Absolutely. So any other lays from you, Brett?
Gee, not really, to be honest.
Not at this stage.
Not at this stage, because we do need to see the barriers, basically. Yeah.
That was amazing, guys. We're about to finish up, but finally, what are your final predictions? Who takes out the series?
For me, my heart says, I want the hometown hero to get the job done. He's due for a good barrier draw. He's certainly if you said, hey, who's your top pick? I think, he's the horse to beat. But at the current prices, now that Swayze is confirmed to come to the series, and there's still $4 out there in the marketplace, I think if you're going to have a futures bet on the series, it's from a pure gambling wagering perspective, head over heart, I think that $4 for Swayze is definitely a better bet than the $1.80-ish Leap to Fame.
Darren?
Yeah, I just want to say that we're all Inter Dominion tragics, so to speak. But this race means so much to so many people, and if the trainers, drivers all love this series as well. So this is what the whole culmination of the sport. So I'm really looking forward to the couple of weeks, and I know Ryan will be up there, and I'm going to head up there for the last round of heats and final. So I can't wait. But from a trotter's point of view, it's hard to go past Just Believe. From a value point of view, I'm talking about my Faster Metro and Plymouth Chubb. From a pacer's point of view, we're speaking the same language. If I was having a bet right now, I'd be backing Swayze. Just so impressed with everything he's done. I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that he's been to New Zealand, has to travel. So that's my only concern about him at the moment, coming back. But we get a good sider. So reluctant to jump into the short price for Leap to Fame. $4 probably overs for Swayze. So that's how I'm going. Long answer, but that's it.
Brett, what about yourself?
I hate to agree with everyone as a rule, but Just Believe $1.80 has to be the bet, and I think Swayze purely on a management position, $4, it's got to start around $2 in the final. Like even if they could be $1.80, $2, the two favourites in the final. Whereas that's a Leap to Fame, I can't see it being shorter than that. Swayze will definitely be shorter than that in the final. So you can back him and then watch him through the series. If you want to get out, you can get out or hold your bet.
Well, that brings us to a close. We definitely need to remind the punters that we're obviously going to have Ryan's expert tips up on the hub with full analysis and betting strategies for those. We also have our new watch list feature on the Betfair app, and that's where you can star your favourite runners, and I reckon we get the watch list from the Carrolls as well. I'd love to know what your betting strategies are closer when you guys have a look at the map and everything. That would be amazing. But yeah, thanks so much, gentlemen. I've definitely learned a lot, and looking forward to the Inter Dominion series, and hopefully we can back and lay a couple of horses and have a bit of success.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate that. Head to the Betfair Hub for all our previews and for the full show and betting strategies.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.